launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and my name is Marc, and I am one of your Celestis ambassadors, and welcome once again to another one of our update broadcasts for our Celestis Memorial space flights. We're happy to provide this service for you to keep you up to date with current events, things that are happening concerning launches, family members, and things of that nature. If you are joining us for the first time this evening, we are broadcasting first from YouTube and also on our Celestis Spacebook. I like that. On our Celestis Spacebook, which is actually our Facebook. If you have any questions whatsoever, please ask. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Please ask whatever you need to ask of us. Our crew is on board with us right now, and they can answer anything that we cannot answer. So if you have any questions whatsoever about our Memorial space flights, please feel free to go ahead and ask. Those of you that have no idea what we do for a living, well, we will prep you on that as well. We're here to say hello to everyone, and I'd like to also say hello to my boss. If you don't know who he is, you will in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Charles Chafer. Charles Chafer is our CEO, our guru, the guy who we follow behind. We will follow him everywhere, and he has some pretty interesting news for our upcoming flights. Charles, how you doing?
Doing good, Marc. How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing fantastic, and I'm always excited to have one of these broadcasts because it leads up to something even more exciting based on our past experiences. So tell us a little bit about Celestis. What is it exactly that we do for those that are out there watching us right now who have absolutely no idea what it is we do?
Good question, and great backdrop, by the way. Looks pretty cool here.
Yeah, I got it working finally, yeah.
That's good. So we founded Celestis in 1994, very much out of motivations that we hear a lot about today in terms of opening the space frontier for everyone. And back in those days, there were space billionaires or billionaires trying to get to space, but they weren't getting as close as they get today. And our original founder, Mercury astronaut Deke Slayton, was approached by a group in Florida with the idea that what a great memorial it would be for people who've always wanted to go to space themselves, or people who just wanted to join the cosmos, given the growth in cremation choices by people, that we offer a space memorial service. And that's basically what we've been doing for almost 30 years, through 17 missions to space and back, to Earth orbit. We currently have 4 celestial spacecraft orbiting to the Earth, to the moon, and even to deep space. And our concept was that we would like to make it affordable. And we defined affordable as, gee, if we could be about half or approximately half the price of a traditional funeral service, that would open the opportunity up for people worldwide to choose our service. And in fact, people worldwide have chosen our service. And we're teeing up 5 missions for the next, I would say, 27 months. And missions move around and happen when they happen. But that's quite a manifest for us, given the, and it's a tip of the hat to the burgeoning commercial space industry, which when we began in 1982 with the first privately funded launch into outer space, there was no such animal. And today, it's just amazing, the opportunities that are being presented to everyone with space flight. And that's benefited us. And so we've, as I said, have done 17 missions. We've put many times more the number of people in space symbolically than have actually gone to space. And in the end, we're really all about fulfilling people's dreams and hopes and thoughts of memorial and providing a really, truly amazing service. And that's what we do.
Well, I have a question for you, and it may be a dumb question, although those don't really exist. But in relationship to recent events, are you excited? Are you really happy with all of these launches that are happening, and that we get to be a part of those launches based on our scheduled missions? Can you give us a little bit of how you feel about all of this right now?
Well, the short answer is I feel like it's about time. We've been toiling away at making humans multiplanetary since the mid 1970s. I first got involved with a professor at Princeton named Jerry O'Neill, who really opened the door on a closed world in the mid 70s by tasking his physics students to document the feasibility of humans living off planet and the benefits not only to Mother Earth with industry moving off the planet and energy coming from unlimited solar energy, but also fulfilling if you will, a cosmic imperative for humans to move out into the solar system and who knows, maybe beyond. So there was a tremendous amount of effort behind those works in the 70s and 80s. And I'll just give you one small example. Every SpaceX launch from Florida is governed by a legal and regulatory structure that was established in the mid 1980s as a reaction to our coming together and pressing the system about launching commercially. So all of that regulatory infrastructure, which is needed, exists because of those efforts back in the 80s. So to answer your question, as I said, I think it's about time. I'm one of these who firmly believe if we avoid doing significant damage to our own planet, that we will and must move to others. And so let's get on with it. That's why I like it.
Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, I love your answer on that. I'm just as excited about the possibilities that are happening. I'm glad that we are partners with the major players that are in this industry. We are a space company ourselves, so I'm happy for everyone, even the competitors. I'm just happy for everyone. So tell us what is our discussion for this evening, other than this little bit that I've started out with.
Well, I want to start out by just doing a quick update. As I mentioned, we have 5 launches to look forward to in the next 27 months. So I kind of want to give a lay of the land on where we are with all of those. And I'll try to do that succinctly and quickly so that we can get to our guest, someone I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with. Forthcoming missions are of every service that we offer. So our Earthrise service, which launches our flight capsules into space and returns them, providing a flown keepsake, is one of our more popular services. And we always, to date, we've flown 8 missions with Up Aerospace out of Spaceport America in New Mexico, beginning even before it was a Spaceport America in New Mexico, when it was just a piece of land that you launch over into White Sands, if you've ever been out there. Obviously, Spaceport America has become a go-to location, and we're proud that we're still, I guess I would say, at least 5 launches ahead of Sir Richard out there in terms of volume of missions that we've done. But that next mission is called Aurora. It will fly on an Up Aerospace Spaceloft XL rocket. And current looks like we've moved from late this year to early next year in terms of the schedule. When I say we've moved, I just mean we've been moved, because to remind all of our clients, we are what's called a secondary payload. And what that means is that we get pricing that allows us to provide our service economically to you. But one of the trade-offs of that pricing is we have absolutely no say over the launch schedule. In this case, the major customer for our flight is NASA. They've been a good customer for Up Aerospace, and NASA recently informed Up that they're moving their target launch, which means our target launch, until early of next year. So we won't be bumping into the holidays with this flight, and we'll have a good opportunity to host people in New Mexico over that period, and that's a rare treat to spend 3 days. You get as up close and personal to a mission as anyone can. You're literally about 5 feet from the rocket during the tour. So that's our first one. Our next one in line will be our second mission to the moon, which we call the Tranquility Flight. There we're flying on the Astrobotic Peregrine mission, which is scheduled to fly, I want to say, about mid next year. That will launch from Florida, Cape Canaveral, on a Vulcan Centaur. In fact, the very first Vulcan Centaur that ULA, the launch service provider, will put up. And that mission is closed. All the other missions I'm talking about still are taking reservations. But we delivered our flight capsules to Astrobotic in January, and we're awaiting integration onto the spacecraft, where we will soft land. I believe it's around 70 folks on a permanent memorial on the lunar surface. And that will be a very cool mission. After that, we'll have our very first Enterprise flight, which is also scheduled for around the middle of next year. Enterprise is our Voyager service, which is essentially a launch to deep space, which we defined as beyond the Earth-Moon system. We have around 100 folks waiting to fly on that mission, including Scotty from Star Trek, Jimmy Doohan, and the Roddenberrys, Majel Barrett and Gene Roddenberry, flying together on, I think, the aptly named Enterprise flight. That'll be a very cool mission, also launched from Florida. After that, we have our next Earth orbit service, which we call Excelsior, and that will go in the first quarter of 2023 from Florida, and that will put our 5th spacecraft in Earth orbit. Some of our earlier ones have deorbited and, like a shooting star, burned up in entirety. And then we have another lunar mission and another Earth orbital mission scheduled in that same period. So we have a full manifest. We're busy, and we're excited about the opportunity to fly just a whole lot. And that's good for us. It's good for the industry, and it's kind of cool to be able to get to go to all of these missions.
I agree. 22 is going to be a very, very busy year for a lot of people who's been waiting for their loved ones to fly. But we're used to this. This is what we do in this industry, and it's never our fault that flights have been canceled or rescheduled. Not necessarily canceled, but
they're never canceled. We always fly.
Right. I misstep there.
Yeah.
But with the flights being rescheduled, we understand people's impatientness, shall I say, for waiting for that. But it's worth the wait, because once you attend one of these, once you see one of these, everyone who's really had to wait a very long time for their flights to take off are always happy, beyond happy, when it actually happens.
That's true, and I think we do a pretty good job of letting people know that this isn't like an airline schedule. That we make a commitment long in advance to the launch, and the launch goes when the launch is ready. And we've done 17 of them successfully. Haven't ever missed one, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
And we're really, the only folks around with that kind of track record. I have a T-shirt that says "Space is hard," and it is. But I think that I was looking back at our history, and we actually went. And this shocked me. We actually went 7 years between launches.
Wow.
From 2001 to 2008, there was SpaceX hadn't formed and flown. There was no commercial launch activity out there. And so those folks were patient. But, it's such an amazing thing. It's a celebration. It's something that people really enjoy doing. And, the waiting is the hardest part, as Tom Petty said.
Yeah.
But everyone knows how well worth it is.
Right. And, like you've already mentioned, our track record here with Celestis is impeccable. Schedule wise, we have nothing to do with that. But in terms of our execution, when this finally happens, we're untouched. I don't want to really say we're, in a competitive business with what we do, but this is one of if not the only best solution for folks that want to do what we do, along with the I didn't know if you wanted to touch on this before you went to our guest, but along with the DNA and along with the PET launches as well.
Well, we broadened our service beyond cremated remains to include, we have a great partner in Thunder Bay, Canada, that produces home DNA kits. And we're partnered with them, and they produce a substance that is the entire human genome in basically a gram of material that we can fly for those who don't elect cremation, or also we have a number of people who want to fly together with a deceased loved one, and they choose that service also. And of course, our PET mission is cool. Also, we've flown a number of folks' pets, and if you're a pet owner, and I am, just how much you want to remember that special pet. So,
yeah, as we look at your photo over your shoulder there.
Yeah, that's my current one.
Yeah.
And she's 15, so we enjoy her every day. Anyway,
yeah,
it's a cool service. It's a service that appeals to people that are space interested, are science fiction interested, have an interest in cosmically joining the universe, are adventurous, have seen all the continents, been to the poles, and they want this service as the ultimate goodbye. And we know that people choose it for a variety of reasons, and that it's meaningful for all those reasons.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
What else do we have on our schedule, sir?
Well, we're fortunate tonight in that we're going to be able to introduce to our folks someone who's pretty well known in the space community, and who has joined us as a Celestis ambassador, and we've published her first blog on her friend astronaut Philip Chapman. Got the second one scheduled very soon. And just in general, I think Emily Carney, who is our guest and the founder of a group that I ran across a few years ago called Space Hipsters, she represents everything Celestis is about, and that includes diversity and inclusion, and we all should be able to go, and we should all have a role in the human space program. And so I'm happy to bring Emily on. Can you bring her up, Marc? Great. Hey, Emily.
Hey there. I'm really happy to join you all tonight. Thank you.
Well, we're pleased to have you. We do these every month. Some months are a little bit more frantic because we're at T-minus 14 days and everybody's making their travel plans and all. But this is one tonight I've been looking forward to, because we can really talk a little bit more about the community writ large, because you are right there. So I guess I'll start off by asking, what is a space hipster, and how did you put that whole thing together?
I'd like to know this myself.
That's a really great question. Well, about a little over 10 years ago or so, I sort of had an idea to have a space flight group on Facebook, and at the time I honestly did not expect anybody to join it. At the time I was like, man, space flight's got to be really niche. Like nobody is into this. So one night I was hanging out, I was on my couch, at home, like I am now. And, I'm like, man, what should I name this group? And my husband was sitting on the same couch and was like, why don't you just call it Space Hipsters? And he meant it kind of sarcastically, and I was like, okay, I'll call it Space Hipster. So I used it as like a placeholder, and it caught on. So now I cannot change the name now, because now it caught on pretty quickly. So it's always going to be Space Hipster. So I have to thank my husband for coming up with the name for it. But how I put it together, basically I just started it, like I said, one night, February 2011. I was just kind of hanging out. It was near the end of the space shuttle program at the time, and morale in the community was kind of low, because some people sort of had this attitude that, well, space flight is ending. Human space flight is ending in the United States, which was not true. And so I was like, I'm just going to start sort of a fun, lighthearted, group, and maybe that'll, tide people over for a while or something. I don't know. I didn't expect anybody to join it, like I said earlier, but let's fast forward. It's been over 10 years later, and now there's, almost 24,500 people in the group. And obviously, this human spaceflight and spaceflight in general is not over. In fact, it's probably picking up more than ever now. So, I think we got a winning formula.
You do indeed, and I follow it closely. The group, the self-selected, and I think it's actually a requirement of your organization that you sign yourself up, that you can't just be put there by somebody else. So it's clearly a highly motivated group. I would say reasonably highly opinionated group. There is not complete agreement on probably any topic, but I think that's what makes your group and your role and the other administrators' role so good, is that you're able to conduct really multiple conversations, keep them within bounds, and I think advance the state of knowledge even among a pretty knowledgeable group. So I don't know that there's a typical member, but just from my snail's eye view, it looks like there's a ton of folks that have actually worked in the space program or are wanting to work in the space program. And I define the space program as really largely, but there's a lot of people who bring not only a fan's interest, and there are a lot of really amazing fans there too, but there's also a lot of professionals who know a lot of things that other people don't know. And so I find it, for any of you that have not yet checked it out, it's a definite Facebook group to look at.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Much appreciated. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I plan on joining that group, so don't deny me when you see my name come up, please.
Okay. Absolutely.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind. You also run a podcast, I do believe, right?
Yeah, you are correct.
And where the name of that, and where can we find it?
It's called Space and Things. I co-host it with a gentleman who's actually in London, England. His name is Dave Giles. And we have a show once a week, and we cover pretty much anything and everything in space flight. We've had a ton of interviews this year with we've had really awesome guests, and we've got some really amazing guests coming up on the show. We've interviewed a lot of people in the space industry. We've interviewed astronauts, writers, people from launch providers, you name it. So our website is spaceandthingspodcast.com. We're on every social media, so if you want to follow our page or follow us on Twitter, please feel free. Our podcast is on every podcast provider. So if you go to like Spotify, it's on there. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on, I think, Acast. But it's also on our website as well, spaceandthingspodcast.com. So if you want to listen to it, it should be available on there. And I believe it's also on YouTube as well. If you just want to type it, it should show up on there as well. So pretty much everywhere where you can hear podcasts, but we're sort of a big tent, like a space podcast, because we talk about, we cover the news every week. We talk about what launches happened and what newsworthy things happen. Like the last podcast, we talked about Inspiration 4, because obviously that's the big story this week, which is, it's historic.
Yeah, that was my next question. If you've caught up so far.
Okay. With the Inspiration 4?
Yes.
Yeah, we did do an episode about that last week. It was before they came back. We did it my cat's trying to bite a box, so if you hear a crinkling sound, I apologize. But we did a show the day it launched. So we recorded a show on Wednesday, the day it launched, because we both watched it, and he watched it streaming, and I watched it from here as best as I could. It was there was some cloud cover where I'm at, so I didn't get a great view, but I got kind of a view. So we did discuss it on the podcast. In fact, it's last week's episode.
I live here in Florida. I'm in Orlando, and I usually watch the countdowns on TV. And as soon as it ignites, I run outside because it's about to clear the tree line in my area. And it was a spectacular launch. It was one of the most, Charles, remember the launch we attended at Kelly Park? What was our last mission? What was that mission?
The Heritage flight, which
the
was
Heritage flight.
Falcon
And
Heavy mission.
you remember the sky effects that rocket made that put us all in awe? Well, I saw a similar, not as great as the one we had, but a similar effect when I was recording it and looking up in the sky at this. It was phenomenal, unbelievable.
Well, that's a good point. Part of what we do for all of our missions is conduct a 3-day on-site celebration. So,
Yeah, party. Yeah.
The mission you mentioned, the Heritage flight, was a launch on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy, which, and I think until Starship flies, is still the largest rocket in the world stable. Maybe the Russians have a bigger one, but it's a big vehicle, and we had. I think we had about 650 guests that we hosted at that flight, and took them, had them briefed by astronaut Winston Scott upon their arrival, took them on tours of the Kennedy Space Center, had a marathon memorial service.
Yeah.
And
it was.
And then we leased a big portion of Jetty Park right there in a viewable zone to watch that launch. We'll do the same thing in New Mexico. It'll be a different scale because the launch is of a different scale, but as I said, it's a much more intimate launch. Emily, I've got a question, and I know you guys are kind of, we're for everything, but I'm wondering if you see trade-offs in the commercial versus governmental pursuit of space programs versus international. To me, and again, I'm probably like you, all of the above is good, but I think that some people are saying, oh, well, why should we spend tax dollars when the billionaires are going to fly people? Or conversely, how dare we let these privateers go into space? We have a taxpayer-funded program that's doing amazing things. Have you got any thoughts or insight or just comments on that trade-off?
Yeah, and I want to make it clear this isn't probably necessarily what everybody in Space Hipsters thinks or what others think. These are my opinions, but as you know, Charles knows this. I'm a big fan of Dr. Gerard K. O'Neill, and basically in the 1970s, I've listened to some of his talks from that point, and a lot of what he said back then is very prophetic. Like, he predicted a lot of stuff. Like, it's almost chilling how like on point he was with some of the stuff that's happening nowadays. But he basically said, NASA is great. Nobody's taking away any of their accomplishments, but unfortunately, NASA's focus changes with every political regime. For example, when the 60s gave way to the 70s, there were budget cuts. We focused on, the space shuttle that, there were some design compromises made to it. So really, that's what O'Neill was talking about, and that, due to, political shifts, that NASA's goal can change a lot, or vehicles can change a lot, as we've seen over the last 15 years or so, where, Ares has become SLS and all that. It's very, it really is dependent on, the government, because the government does control it. Whereas, while SpaceX does have, obviously there is commercial crew, which is funded through NASA. Private spaceflight, they can set whatever goals they want. Like this space flight that just happened, the historic Inspiration 4 mission. It was a mission to obviously inspire, as the name says, but they also raised a heck of a lot of money for charity, and they had their own goals during that mission. They did perform science, but they also they flew somebody for the first time in history, which I think is amazing, with an internal prosthetic. NASA's never done anything like this before, and I hate to say it, it's probably because NASA's requirements for astronauts are probably a lot different from, say, letting, from a civilian agency would probably be, or not a civilian agency, but a non-government agency.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's important that they did that, because I do believe, going back to Gerard K. O'Neill again, I do believe that, we're going to see more regular non-agency, I say regular people, but I mean non-agency, we're going to see more non-NASA astronauts as time goes on. This is something that's just going to happen. I believe it's not going to just stop, and we're probably going to see more people who are not aligned with NASA going to space in the next few years. And, it's, yeah, and they're not aligned to any particular, they don't have to be aligned to like a governmental goal or anything, right, like that. Like currently NASA is trying to go back to the moon again. With these private missions, they can establish whatever scientific goal they would like. And I'm just personally, I'm extremely excited about it. I am making a big deal about this because I think Haley Arsenault, she's shown that somebody with an internal prosthetic can fly to space and come back and they're okay, and I'm sure there were other physical, and medical experiments performed up there, and we'll get a lot of good results from that as well. And I think it's as useful as anything that's going on in the ISS. Granted, the ISS, they stay up there much longer, but I think it's just as useful. And I think this is just the first one. I think in the next few years, we're going to see, hopefully, a lot of this going on. And it's really the dream of futurists is starting to come true. The dream of people like O'Neill and a lot of his, the people who worked with him, it's just starting to happen. So I love all spaceflight, and I'm not judging NASA at all. But like I said, they are controlled by the government, and their timeline and their goals are very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope I made sense. I kind of went on for a bit.
No, it's fine.
It made good sense. Well, Jerry O'Neill gave me my first job in the space world, so I know where from you speak. In fact, I was in charge of monitoring Congress for him when I was a student at Georgetown, and Jerry came to Washington reluctantly, but with a knowledge that, hey, I ought to at least go try. And I think it was largely in response, he got a couple of small study contracts out of NASA, but NASA basically stiff-armed him, and the Hill had some great hearings, and there was a lot of momentum. And I think Jerry reached a point, I know he reached a point where he said, well, we've got to create an alternative pathway to just the government, hence the Space Studies Institute, hence GeoStar, hence many of his activities throughout his life. And, that twin multiple paths approach is now, I think, pretty firmly ensconced. And it leads me, and we have a couple of questions waiting, but yes. Leads me to ask about, I grew up in the space field. My first boss was Right Stuff astronaut Deke Slayton, and I met them all. I know them all, and the world that they occupied of test pilot, super fit male, we're the chosen ones. We have the right stuff, although none of them ever really said that, but nevertheless, there was a whole, this is how you go to space. Okay, so now that model is completely blown away, and not to the exclusion of guys like Deke and others, but really more to the inclusion of other folks. And I wonder if you could just wax poetic a little bit on, from your point of view, about what that does in terms of help sustain the overall program, give it some nourishment that maybe just a few highly trained civil servants orbiting the planet doesn't. This is really truly almost at a level of a movement now, I think. That's my thought.
Yeah. Well, back to I keep bringing him up a lot, but I've read a lot of his work, and back to Jerry O'Neill, who we've been talking about. I watched an interview with him. There's a new movie that's out. It's called The High Frontier. You guys have probably seen it. It's about his life in the frontier.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's the first time I saw you, I was like, he's in The High Frontier. Wow. But I watched the movie, and it was just greatly inspiring to me because I'd never seen a lot of the footage in it.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of footage in it was him on like a talk show in the 80s, and someone in the audience was asking, do I need to be like an engineer or a scientist to go to space? Do I need to study that? And he's like, no, you don't have to be this great scientist or engineer. You can be, if you're a writer or an artist or something else, just be the best writer or artist or whatever you can be. And I think that the latest endeavors in space, such as with what just happened, Inspiration 4, it's showing that, I mean, and I'm not taking away, Dr. Cyan Proctor is someone who I think, probably the most qualified person to ever fly to space who was not a NASA astronaut previously. And, Isaac Min is a pilot. So I'm not saying they were not qualified in any way. They absolutely are. But, Dr. Proctor, she's very, if you follow her on social media, she's very focused on the arts. She does a lot of Afrofuturistic art and things like that. She's really, into that. And in space, I know she did some paintings and stuff like that. I think she did a painting or a drawing or something, but she was showing it back to Earth. And I'm sure some people were probably like, great, they sent somebody to space to draw pictures or something like that. But but there's also people, there's also an agency astronaut, Nicole Stott, who's a space artist. And she also painted a watercolor in space. And we've also had people from the Apollo era. Alan Bean was a great space artist. So I think it's very important to also enterprise humanities and, writing. And, we look at a lot of astronauts from the past. Mike Collins was a beautiful writer. And Al Worden was a poet. You wouldn't have thought about it because they were these typical, the right stuff. If you look at pictures of them, they look like fighter jocks, but, they had this side of them that was very unexpected. And I think that all is very important. I think we need all of that in space flight. We need to send we need to send musicians and poets and writers to space.
Bringing it around to Celestis and noting that that's one of the foundational reasons for our existence is making space flight, at least at some point, available to everybody and making it also affordable for everybody, which is another semi-elusive goal that we're chasing, but I think we will get to. We have some questions. I think we need to jump into those.
Yeah, and to actually segue into what Emily and both of you guys were talking about, one of our questions, two great questions from Don right here. He kind of took my question because that was already in my mind, but I want to piggyback a little bit on that. And here's his first fantastic question, which got me going. And he basically said, Emily, your thoughts on how future civilian missions might be formed, like Inspiration 4 or random folks put together. And to piggyback on that, I feel the same way because I know we're all talking about who can become an astronaut. You don't have to be a scientist or you don't have to be someone who's studied a lot. You can be of the arts. But my problem with that is affordability. It seems that it is at a rate, and Charles did touch on it. I'm assuming at some point it will become affordable, but when there are, believe it or not, so many people in the world right now who can afford this trip, and I see them as being first in line because they have the money. And if these providers are not willing to drop the price because they know they're getting what they want to have, exactly when will that turn come for you and I?
That is a great question. I do want to add that I don't think we've, obviously Inspiration 4 was funded by, Isaacman is very rich.
Sure.
So and obviously, he paid for that mission, not to take away from what they did from in that mission. I still think it's amazing that, 4 regular people got to go up. That's a great question. I do think that's a ways off. I'm honestly, to sort of try to answer both of your questions, and I'm sure people will roll their eyes hearing this because they're like, oh my God, this is such a 1970s idea. I'm honestly hoping we have some kind of maybe privately funded, like I think civilian's a bad word, because there's a lot of civilian NASA astronauts who aren't in the military, but, maybe a core of like non-agency astronauts who aren't who are in decent shape, but who aren't necessarily, Deke Slayton or something like that. Or, somebody who doesn't really adhere to that, they're not a fighter jock with, 3,000 hours of, jet experience or something like that. Because we've seen people like that go to space and do just fine. In the 1980s, there was, and a lot of people have forgotten this, in the 1980s, there was obviously NASA or the People's Company funded their flights to space, but we saw payload specialists go to space who they were non-NASA astronauts. They didn't have the exact same training as the NASA astronauts, but they got to fly on shuttle flights, and there are many of them who had a lot of success in space. Like Charlie Walker he was with I think McDonnell Douglas, and he ended up flying 3 times, and he's I've met him a few times, and he's got amazing stories. I mean, to me, he's an astronaut.
Mm.
There's no debate for me about that. He's the same as any of the guys and women he flew with on those missions.
We should point out that there are some initiatives I'm aware of. For example, I think it's called Space for Humanity by Rachel Lyons is the leader of it, which is looking at fundraising and then just flying normal folks and doing it, almost not quite a lottery, but a way to use crowdfunding to buy seats that will enable those who don't have the funds for the big ticket items, at least to begin going. It reminds me, nothing is ever new in the sense that I can't remember it. It was the mid 1980s. A young man who worked for us when we were in the rocket launching business got it in his mind that he would run a raffle, and the winning ticket got a flight to the Mir space station. And he got a lot of press about it, got a lot of interest in it, and then got led away in handcuffs by the Texas guard for running an illegal lottery.
Oh.
So,
oh boy, yeah.
There are bunches of ways to try to crack that elitism, but most of them, I think, are to respond to what Marc was saying. I think everybody wants to lower the ticket price because there's volume, and most of these folks, Bezos, Musk, et al., are really doing it to create a mass amount of folks flying for a purpose. Opening up, Mars habitats as such. Okay, Don has revised and extended his remarks and says maybe a better way to ask is, will we likely have someone or some company with a mission in mind like Jared, or is it possible that folks will be able to buy a seat?
I think either or. Honestly, yeah. I think people will probably have one of both choices. If you're very wealthy, you could probably, be like, well, and if you obviously fit the minimum physical requirements, you don't have any major health issues, you could probably buy a seat. But I do think they'll probably, like you said, there'll be something like, hey, if you're not super wealthy, you could maybe, join sort of a, you know, a non-agency astronaut corps if you meet obviously certain minimum requirements. But yeah, but you don't have to be somebody with like, you know, uh, I've thought about applying for the NASA astronaut class before, and I just looked at the application. I was like, nope, not even gonna. It's just gonna
Oh.
be one big old X. It's not even, yeah, because um, the application is like, how many PhDs do you have? I'm like, oh boy, yeah, I ain't making it. Yeah,
Right.
I'm not making it to that. I mean, really, and not to throw shade at NASA. I think they do their astronauts are incredible. I mean, they're obviously very well trained and everything to go to space, but most people cannot meet those requirements. Most
Got it.
people cannot.
Real quick, if there's anyone that has a question, you have about 8 minutes to get your question in, if you don't mind. If you have one, there is one that is related to Celestis, and I'll go ahead and bring that up if you don't mind. Richard basically says, Emily, do you think Celestis is widely known by the people on Space Hipsters?
I don't think it's as widely known. There are a few people in the group, obviously, who know what it is. I know a few people who plan on doing memorial flights when their time comes. I'm hoping to do one someday myself. Hopefully, I'm hoping to catch. Before that, I'm hoping to catch one of these SpaceX flights, maybe, maybe. But I don't think it's as widely known in Space Hipsters. I don't think it's probably yeah, as widely known in the space community as it probably should be, because it's been around. Like Charles said, it's been, the company's been around in some form or another over 30 years, and I do think there's probably part of a contingent in the space community who probably thinks, well, that's crazy. Why would I want to get my ashes put in space? That sounds nuts.
It's not just the space community. There's in my sci-fi community, you would think they would jump on board almost immediately for this chance. I like the fact that we have other options, and in other words, you don't have to be dead in order for this to happen to
Yeah.
you. The DNA options, even if you have pets, you have loved ones you like to journey with, those options now exist. And I'm sure with your help, we'll try to spread that message out a little broadly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think the idea of doing those things is really odd to me, because like I was just thinking last week, I was thinking about Bill Pogue, who did the legacy flight on the Falcon Heavy.
Hmm.
And he was a Skylab astronaut. He flew in 1973 to 74. He was a Thunderbird Air Force pilot, one of the elite Thunderbirds.
Cool.
And I'm sure when he went up, when he did the legacy flight, so a part of his ashes were put into, I think, low Earth orbit on that one. I'm sure a few people were probably like, man, why is he doing that? He already went to space. Why is he doing that? And I could tell you why. That's a place where he had some of his best memories. If you look at, when he was flying for the Thunderbirds, he wasn't in space, but he lit up the skies. I'm sure he had wonderful memories of that. And Skylab was a very exciting time for him. If you watch the video and stuff, he's having a blast. So I'm sure there was I look at it as akin to, a lot of sailors at the end of their life, they do burial at sea. That's
Sure.
not very unusual.
Yeah.
Susan Cooper, Gordon Cooper's widow, we came and spoke at
New Mexico.
We flew him twice, and she said, how could I not? Gordon just loved the time that he spent in space. How could I not give this to him at this time? And I think, what I've learned, I come out of the space and rocket side of the world, but it's definitely been funeral 101 for me the last several years. And what we learn is that people address death in different ways. They also try to usually begin thinking about, what am I going to do when they're 55 plus. So for young people, it's not going to ever be at the forefront of their thinking, although, we do hear from some. It's mostly that we want to try to be ubiquitous. I have a little saying from the New York Times business page that says ubiquity is the new exclusivity. And that's what we're trying to do. So our service is now available at over 5,000 points of sale here in the US through our partnership with Service Corporation International, the largest funeral service provider. That's only been true for a couple of years. And so now we're already starting to see people walk in having never heard about us, but they're at a place in their life where they need to make choices, and they're given a bunch of options, from scattering in national parks to becoming a diamond to becoming a reef to scattering at sea to launching into space. And that's really the way that I think people ultimately find out about us, is when they're ready to. And then we're pretty visible. And the results are that I think that you have to think, well, I noticed someone, Ms. Rother says, she's looking to think more about prearrangement, as opposed to, it's something that you have. What we find is people have our brochure in their desk drawer, and then it's appended to the will, and the family goes, oh, this is what he wanted, or this is what mom wanted, and boom, we're here to make it happen. So it's an interesting juxtaposition for us, because we're involved in some of the highest technology that you can be involved in, but we're also involved in the oldest ritual that humans have. And as we move out into space, we're going to take our rituals with us. So, it's just timing and appropriateness, and we try to be well-timed and always appropriate, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
And if I may add, because I'm looking at Don's other comment here, basically the last sentence, which was no need for it yet. Well, let me add this to you, Don. I buried my mother this year, within the last few months, and the family, the 3 children, paid for nothing. My mother had everything paid for, everything arranged, everything laid out, and we were just basically there to honor her without any worries of bills or burial plot or funeral, nothing, because she pre-planned. She did this for years to plan this, and you can't sit here and say, well, I'll be here tomorrow, I can wait. No, you start now, do it now, and Celestis could be one of your options. That was a commercial break, by the way. No.
No, it's an interesting discussion. And anytime you talk about humans in space, you get varied opinions. And, what I've found is that those opinions are almost always strong in our community.
Yeah. I told my husband, I don't plan on checking out anytime soon, but I did tell him, when I go someday, I'm hoping to do that, And I think for a minute he was like, what the heck, Emily, that sounds nuts. And then he read the blog I wrote about Phil Chapman, and then he got it. He was like, okay, now I understand. So.
Well, we won someone over here. If you could read this.
All right, Don.
All right, I won my commission. No. Good job, Don. Don't wait. Charles, anything else? Are we still talking to Emily here, or
no? I think we hit the magic 1 hour time frame here, and it went really fast, and there's so many other things to discuss. But welcome as a Celestis ambassador.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much.
We're looking forward to your contributions every month. and to getting you out to a launch real
Yes,
soon.
absolutely.
And nothing, that's what we do. And so you don't really know who we are until you've come to one of our launch events. So thank you so much for agreeing to join with us tonight. And looks like we're promoting today, September 25th, Past, Present, Future of Women in Space Exploration. I will be there.
Awesome. Yep. Sign up for it. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is on Emily's Facebook page. And if you go to her Facebook page, Space Hipsters, you'll find a lot of interesting material there. As a Celestis ambassador, I think it's only right that we honor her and thank her so much and show her off, basically, as we're doing now. We're showing her off. Couldn't get the cat on screen, but that's okay. I'm not a cat man. I'm a dog man. I'm sorry.
I think he's sleeping right now anyway. They're
Oh,
both
okay.
asleep.
All right.
Well, thanks again. Thank you, Marc. As always, you bring an easy flow to our conversations, and we very much
Thanks,
appreciate
Don.
it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Don. And you know where to find us. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Emily Carney and, of course, our CEO and Grand Poopah, Charles Chafer. And we are Celestis. Look us up everywhere. Just Google our name, and you will get all the information. Hey, call us. So we like to hear your voice. Say hello. We're not car salesmen, but if you have any questions that you'd like answered, just call us. We'd be glad to tell you what this is all about. Okay, so be a part of us. We will talk to you soon, and we're going to go ahead and end the way that we started. So good evening, everyone. Have a great week, and we shall be talking and looking to you forward. Emily, thank you so much. I'm going to stalk you like you wouldn't believe. Okay. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Good night. Good night.
This is the launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire.